I suppose living in the United States and being caught therefore in a one-party system with two wings to choose from, or living in England where I was born with a once radical Labour Party now sounding like moderate Tories sometimes when not being loony right, one could say, ah well, and get some sleep, it's only natural. But why would I? Why would we think that this nation or that, founded on what they are founded on, should be anything but as disappointing and frustrating as they are, if one is even a tepid humanist? We do really have common values. Common. This must be the appeal of the Labour/Democrat spread. It must be, there is no other way to explain what we want. It is in our values that we are underlings. I saw a play last year about leasehold in Britain. To be quick, in Britain, you buy property but only own for a certain period. You basically lease it from the real owner, often the Crown, and as your end day approaches, you can buy more years on your lease, a rip-off of Royal Dimensions, unless we all play. So, old-fashioned, unfair, crazy from an American point of view. Our agreed shared value would be private home ownership. Yes, yes, absolutely. No more renting. My castle, I can do anything in my house. I can redesign it. I can rebuild it. No more lining the pockets of the landlords. The people who made the play had campaigned for property ownership, for freehold. It was about the exploitation of this home ownership value by the unscrupulous real ownership class, probably invented 1,000 years ago when the idea of the good king providing for his people was etched. There was a talk back after. There had been a great enjoying of the play, a feeling of solidarity, and I asked in a fun sort of way, were there going to be certain regulations in this new ownership scheme? You see, I live in America where there is no leasehold, where you own, after paying off the bank, the property totally. And then another value creeps in. I own property, don't need all of it, so I rent it to non-owners. I become a landlord, etc. The playmakers looked at me as if I was speaking medieval Japanese. In total innocence, I asked again. Then a hostility brewed, not from the makers, but from the audience. Why was I spoiling a nice evening? You are mucking up a good cause. I suppose they supposed I was a troll. But I hear this over and over in many guises, that the class argument is really an opportunity argument, the opportunity to get an education, to buy a house, to rise, therefore, to rise. To rise, the opportunity to become better instead of. Here the Tories and New Labour are in absolute harmony. We all want a chance to become Tory, they say, to rise to ownership, from boss to boss. The problem in society, we all agree, is that though there will be poor always, the gifted and the deserving will have the opportunities the class system didn't allow. And here we have Godfather scenes. Michael, didn't want this for you. I want you to do better, to be Senator Corleone. Better. This is the first generation where we will not do better than our parents' generation. Oh no, oh no. Apparently universal values, until Dr. King comes along and says no labor is really menial unless you're not getting adequate wages. Statements like that will get you shot in America. Or as my current fave, Norman Finkelstein, would say, if you're lost, cold, and desperate, would you rather encounter a peasant from southern Italy or a Harvard law professor? Be careful. Or as my brother would say, if you're bored at work, it is you, not the work. These three thoughts undermine our shared values, our shared prison. Now, I don't think it is coincidence that the European Industrial Revolution kicked in the late 18th century just as the US was born, and the founders, for all their rhetoric, decided that the free labor was even better than the almost free, slave better than serf, and had no qualms about continuing their original sinning after they became nation. The industrial was indeed a revolution that changed as much as the previous one, the agricultural revolution, 12,000 years before, the lives of everyone, but not the condition, the have and have not condition. There is a new set of historians, prehistorians, who date the having and notting to the agricultural revolution, but it is what we have had and got used to for the last 12,000 years. And so our intellectuals insist that this is our nature. And aside from some buried instinct of fair play, we are understandably what we are today, selfish or competitive, if you like, though competitiveness would have been absolutely useless in almost everything we did for so long. It would have finished us off, and probably will going forward. I still hear the urgings that competition made things better over time, and its elevation to a virtue in places like the US is embedded in the male psyche deep. But psychosis is no argument of usefulness or health. For sure, the hunter-gatherers who are still around are very egalitarian. Apparently, they always were. And therefore, be honest, some people will insist backwards. They have insisted more than that, unequal or inferior until very recently, and old habits die badly. I read someone who felt that the need for cooperation and collectiveness is why we developed nationalisms, unifying stories, very Yuval Harari, but I don't know. Those stories do tend authoritarian and are based on who should command and who obey. Kings are big in most of those stories, maybe all of them, or at least the ones that I know, and the evidence is all over. We are unified by who's in charge, religion. There are others elsewhere, however, other stories. It is fact that the old world had invented slaveries. The prehistorian will probably say around 12,000 as the birth of that nastiness as well, before 1776. But 1776 didn't end it. There is a fuzziness about slavery before Christianity, before 1492. My theory is that the civilization that allowed itself to steal continents on a racial religious premise did the same slight with slavery on the same premise. I don't think the Greek idea of barbarians can be switched out for the Catholic invention of racially inferior. Most of the Greek slaves were captured enemies of the same race. They had tremendous respect for Egypt and Persia, who nonetheless spoke barbar. Europe and Asia were big on high and low born and had developed all kinds of definitions to justify, but hard to claim they were racial. The US and Europe have at last allowed that their scientists were wrong about this racial stuff. The rest of us will catch up, I hope, if we don't step back and start singing all the old songs again, because the old songs, tropes, isms, and absolutes are comforting, and God, we need comforting. I don't have any value judgment about these things. They are what happened, driven by myths and individuals, and there is no point in saying otherwise, less point in calling it evil. They will dodge by denying, pointing at some Chinese dynasty, or more prevalent, claiming eggs broken in omelet making. As things stand, I read the Democrats and Republicans, Labor and Conservatives as agreeing that these are our historical truths. All four banners wave above them, accept them. So any betterment of conditions, if desired at all, should come from this same system. Wait while the white people make the best accommodation they can and look good in commercials. Or real revolution. We need the rich to pay their fair share, ha ha, as if their share was fair in the first place. It definitely is one of the stories. Fair share, says even Bernie. We can't afford them at all anymore. But in many places, the rich, the poor, who the rich fear, will say don't. Why? They are desperate to be rich. It is the only motivator. As I study the scene, this seems to be consensus. Life around here is about proving your worth and enjoying what that avails you. If you are financially successful, you are successful and you merited it. The change, the revolution, was seen in the expansion of opportunities to more and more of us to express this worth, this very large, with very large and obvious exceptions. There's a great conversation in the history of Herodotus, Volume 1. Croesus asks Solon, who is the happy man? Solon was a guest in Ionia, was expected to flatter, but he did not. The second happiest? Nope. The third? Nope. Croesus had had enough and sent him on his way. I am the happiest man. I am the richest. Look it up. It's real.